Well, straight away, I'm joined by Republican Bud DeFlavis and by Patrick Melody, a Democratic analyst, both with Irish roots, by the way. We didn't know that. Bud, first of all, you're a Pennsylvania man. You know everything about it. It's key. What are you predicting?
I predict that Kamala Harris will probably win Pennsylvania. I say probably because I think it's going to be very close. But I have heard from my friends in Pennsylvania that Philadelphia just hit the numbers past 2020. At 12:30 today, they were at 70%, and they just blew by the numbers for 2020 on the Democratic side. So they're very optimistic about that. Also, there's a tremendous amount of lines at Villanova University, University of Pennsylvania, Temple University. All these young people are voting, and they're voting like they did in 2020. So I would say that's a good sign. You also, in Pennsylvania, have some built-in advantages in that Bob Casey is running. He's run 3 times. His father was an extremely popular governor from my hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania. Yeah. Also, Joe Biden's hometown. And Joe Biden was up in Scranton and throughout Pennsylvania campaigning. And Dave McCormick, the candidate who's running against Bob Casey, even said, he said, you know, if Joe Biden were at the top of the ticket, my race would be harder. So Biden will play a role in Pennsylvania, as will John Fetterman, our secret weapon, who's extremely popular in the rural areas.
He's smiling.
And also, you have Josh Shapiro, who is really popular governor, and he knows that this is part of his job to deliver for Harris Walls, and he is from the Philadelphia suburbs, where he knows that area well.
But what do you think?
Well, not surprisingly, I think Patrick is spot on a few things, but not surprisingly, I think it'll turn out the other way. He's right. The governor is a Democrat. Both senators are Democrats. Bob Casey is although a likable guy, hasn't been a terribly effective senator in many respects. But this morning, and Patrick did quote some early numbers. This morning, in 2020, Democrats had more than 550 mail-in ballots, more than they did today. Republican mail-in ballots and early voting are the same. Now, this is a state that Biden won by only 80,000 votes. Now, whether they can make that up or not, it's certainly possible. But Republicans that I've talked to this morning are feeling fairly good about what they've seen so far.
And yet, what about the women votes? I've been around Washington now for a few days, and everyone has been saying, watch the women. Watch in particular how they are coming out for Kamala. Younger women, and also a lot of white educated women.
Well, to go outside of the Pennsylvania as a battleground state, one thing that both campaigns are probably going to look at is the state of Indiana, which will close its polls at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight. And they have an abortion initiative on the ballot there. And if you look at what happened in Kansas and what happened in Ohio, and I think Bud would agree with me that Ohio and Kansas are considered to be red states. They're considered to be conservative states. If you look at what happened with those abortion ballot initiatives in those states, they exceeded expectations on the pro-choice front. And that could be a good indication of what's going to happen tonight.
What do you think?
Well, abortion is going to be an issue, clearly. I think, sadly, for the Harris campaign, it's really her only issue.
It has resonated, though, hasn't it?
It has resonated. Now, but not all women are pro-choice. And I think that's important to remember. And, states will ultimately decide this. I think certainly some of the comments that the former president has made over the years doesn't help his case. But that said, there are still a lot of pro-life Republicans out there, or women, and it's not a guarantee, but it certainly will drive up numbers for Harris.
What about Latino voters? Another key. I mean, obviously, post the garbage comment, people were worried a lot about Puerto Ricans. What's your feeling about how that vote might go?
Well, in Pennsylvania, you have Allentown and Reading area. Allentown is now a majority Latino area. They have a Latino mayor. I've heard from my friends in Pennsylvania that they were enthusiastic, but now they are more enthusiastic than they have ever seen them after those comments. They found them to be extremely offensive. And I have to say, as a campaign operative, you want to close strong and you don't want to make any mistakes. And that was a mistake. And I know that Donald Trump said, well, I didn't know who that comedian was. I didn't know who that person was. And I get that. But you know what? Your name is on the ballot. Like, you're responsible for that. It doesn't matter. And this is a pattern with Trump where he's like, no, I didn't know about that. I don't take responsibility for that. Yeah. The job of President of the United States is to take responsibility for what you're doing.
It was a stupid comment made by a comedian, no question. I think the war of words and the lack of focus on policy is the bigger issue here. Now, it doesn't help when a comedian makes that statement about a key voting demographic. It's even worse when a president, the current president, follows up and says that half the Trump supporters are garbage. Both
That's not what he meant.
It is what he meant.
No, it is not.
Well,
no,
I read it that way. You may have read it another way. And the clarification was even more sloppy. In fact, I think it was kind of insulting. He should have said he misspoke and moved on from it. But look,
they did clarify it, and then they moved on.
Well, right. I didn't find it satisfying. I don't think a lot of other people did either. But a comedian versus what the current sitting president says from the same party of the vice president, look, both were self-inflicted wounds that didn't have to happen and don't really reflect the seriousness of the issues we're facing.
Interestingly, watching your American television all day today, as I was, so many people still say, though, that the economy is top of their voting reasons. Like a lot of the people on both sides were saying that's why they're going to vote. Does that resonate?
Yeah, I think the economy is always an issue. I don't think you can ignore that. Those are kitchen table issues. But I do think that people do remember what it was like during the pandemic and what was happening with the economy then. And they do understand that we've now had a soft landing, and that's the leadership of Biden-Harris. And gas prices are down, and things look like they have stabilized, and people will remember that. And also, I don't think in particular older Americans are going to forget January 6th. I do think that is a factor too. That's a bigger factor than a lot of the polls may be showing.
And that's interesting, actually, because watching even some Republicans today on television, they were saying that they are devoted to being Republicans, but they're very concerned about Donald Trump's rhetoric and also the fact that his big star at the moment is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I think it's helpful. I think it's, this time around, I was a hesitant Trump supporter. But I have to say, I've been interested in some of the people he's surrounded himself with thus far. I think it's very interesting that he wants to give a role to someone like Elon Musk as a way to maybe attack the size and scope of government. I think a lot of Republicans can get behind that. I think surrounding himself with Robert Kennedy is also an interesting pick as we face unprecedented levels of health crises in this country. And no one else seems to be talking about that. And I think if the President Trump is successful the second time around, I think it'll be interesting to see that issues that people have been thinking about for a long time are finally getting attention. Everyone agree. A lot of people agree that the size and scope of government's too big, that our obesity epidemic is out of control, that people have chronic illnesses left and right, and no one's really asking why. So even though the former president and Mr. Kennedy probably didn't have anything in common, I think the fact that he's trying to open himself up to new ideas is frankly refreshing.
Now, Patrick Melody looks quite different, but we've been joined by Catherine Lucy because Patrick had to go there. Catherine, of course, you're a very well-known journalist with the Wall Street Journal with lots of insider views. What's your own take at this stage?
I think it's obviously too close to call. I mean, this is such a closely fought election, right down to the wire. And I think one of the things that we've really seen with this race that is important to think about is just how severe the gender divide has been.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, if she wins, it will really be because you see a strong turnout from women who are energized by abortion and other issues. If Trump wins, it may well be because he gets a lot of men out, particularly younger men who don't always vote. And so we've really seen a stark difference there in the closing days of the race.
What do you think will be key for you? I mean, will you be looking mainly at Pennsylvania, North Carolina? What will you be looking for? What's the main indicator you will go,
Well,
okay?
Obviously, Pennsylvania is, as you've been discussing, such a big state, so many electoral college votes, but we're not going to get full results. It's unlikely we get full results from Pennsylvania tonight. We will likely get a decent amount of information from Georgia and North Carolina tonight.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean the race will be over, but it could indicate some directions, in terms of where those states are going. Maybe one of those states gets called, but also you might be able to tell some things from those states about how these different demographics are playing. So what do the suburbs around Atlanta look like, for example? What are we seeing in terms of turnout? And so I think those are, some of the things we'll both be looking at tonight.
And of course, but people are very worried that Donald Trump, I suppose he has been suggesting that if it doesn't go his way, that there is voter fraud. I mean, how seriously do we need to take that?
Well, I think it depends on a few things. I mean, if there are credible, I think a little bit of his rhetoric has toned down a little bit. I do worry about that. I think if there are serious, legitimate, not anecdotal questions that people are able to prove, I think there may be room for lawsuits and second looks and recounts and things of that nature. I don't get the sense that he has just from what I've noticed, just in some of the public statements or public posturing, that it's as big a deal. Maybe he is a little older, maybe he is maybe hopefully a little wiser. He wasn't able to make the case for some of the election fraud last time. I was talking to a friend a few weeks ago, and who was convinced there was a great deal of voter fraud in the past election. And I said, look, I don't disagree that there probably was some things that weren't right or that were not above board. But I think the bigger voter fraud were from things that stemmed around censorship and tech companies conspiring with the government. That, I think, is the bigger area of voter fraud. But we'll wait and see. I think we're all hoping for the best.
Stay with us, Bud and Catherine. I'm just going to hand back to Dublin. I'm still joined here by Catherine and Bud. You were saying when we were listening to Dublin there that, in fact, for you, the big issue really has been Roe versus Wade, the whole abortion issue.
That's right. Ever since Roe was overturned in 2022, we've just seen it as a massively motivating issue for women in the midterm elections and in a number of special elections since then. It's really brought women out in a huge way to the polls and has, I think, motivated moderate women, independent women in ways we haven't seen. We obviously have to see how today unfolds, but if we see Harris win, I think that's going to be a huge reason why that issue has been very, very powerful.
For you, I think, Bud, you were saying as well that immigration is still a massive issue.
I think immigration and the border, more specifically the border. I was here in the Capitol building on September 11th of 2001. I kind of saw firsthand what could happen to a vulnerable United States. I think allowing unfettered access to the border from many of them are job seekers and good people, but we don't know all the people that are coming across the border. And there are the border situation is just unconscionable. I think we really need, if Mr. Trump does win, I think his insistence on and the way he handled the border situation was far superior to certainly than the Biden administration, and of which the vice president has had a hand in.
Would you agree with that? I mean, Kamala Harris herself has now come out and said she would consider a wall.
Harris has tried to signal a tougher position on the border, and immigration and the border have been a real vulnerability for her. Since she entered the race, she's polled better, obviously, on abortion, but Trump has polled better on the economy and immigration. She has improved her numbers in the economy, but immigration has remained a problem for her.
And also, she can't say, as someone was saying today, that she knew nothing about the 4 years because she's been in the administration.
No, this has been kind of a key issue for her, is she has really tried to position herself as a change agent, as a generational change and a new voice. But of course, she is part of the incumbent White House. And that's been a balancing act, although it does seem like a lot of voters do see her as an agent of change, polling shows that a lot of people see her as a new voice and a new face. So she's had some ability to move that message, but it remains a challenge for her.
But in the final days, I noted she was very much talking about inclusivity, which is the polar opposite, Bud, to what Donald Trump does. I mean, do you not find when you look at some of his rhetoric and some of what he says about people, that's very divisive for your country that you love?
It is divisive, and I can tell you, if I were running the campaign or advising the campaign, I would do things differently. I have to say, I think that the fact that Republicans have been Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and some other, and he's been a little bit of a softening blow, a little bit, or a softening, moderating voice, somewhat to smooth down Donald Trump's rough edges. Again, I would handle it a little bit differently, but people have made their minds up about Donald Trump for the most part. They either like him or they don't. They either think the 4 years he was in office was successful or not. But then, his message is basically, are you better off than you were before than 4 years ago? I think the answer is no on many respects, and we'll just have to wait and see.
It's so divided, just even the recent Ipsos Reuters poll in the past day. I mean, it's almost like 50-50. Do you find it unusual, Catherine, to be living in a country that is so divided? And is this for you the most important election you've ever covered?
It is a very divided country. It's been divided for some time. I mean, that's not new, but certainly the political climate of the past few cycles, I think, has escalated that. And I think a lot of voters are really tired. I think you hear from a lot of people that they are weary of this political climate.
Well, look, one line.
We are divided, but I live in a very, very diverse and neighborhood that where my neighbors don't see eye to eye, we all get along.
Okay.
We all get along.
Good to hear, Bud. Bud, Catherine, thank you both so much for joining us tonight in Washington. Back over to you, Sarah, in Dublin.